You've done everything right. You cut the bread. You stopped the late night snacking. You switched to salads. You counted the calories. You did what worked for you 20 years ago, and you did it again and again. And the scale didn't move. Or maybe it moved a little, a pound here, 2 pounds there, and then it just stopped and crept back up. And you sat there thinking, what is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. That is the first thing I want you to hear today. Nothing is wrong with you. But something changed. Something inside your body shifted quietly, gradually, without anyone sitting you down and explaining it. And that shift is the real reason the rules that worked at 45 are not working at 65. It is not your willpower. It is not your effort. It is biology. Specific, measurable, explainable biology that almost nobody takes the time to walk you through. My name is Dr. Peter Vale, and today, that changes. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what happened inside your body, why weight loss after 65 follows completely different rules, what the 3 real drivers are that nobody told you about, and what actually works now. Not what worked before, what works now for the body you have today. Subscribe if this channel is new to you. Every week, I cover what your doctor knows but didn't have time to explain. Let's get into it. Before we get into the 3 real drivers, I need to give you a picture of what's happening inside your body right now, because once you see it, everything else makes sense. Here's the question most people never ask. Why does the same diet that worked in your 40s stop working in your 60s? The answer is not that you got lazier. It is not that your metabolism is broken. It is that your body is running a completely different operating system than it was 20 years ago. And you've been trying to use the old instructions. Think about it this way. Imagine you've been driving the same car for 20 years. You know exactly how much fuel it takes to get from here to there. You know when to fill up. You know how it handles. Then one day, someone quietly swaps out the engine. Same car on the outside, completely different mechanics underneath. And you're still using the old fuel map, wondering why you keep running out of gas in places you never did before. That is what happens to your body between 45 and 65. 3 specific things change in your body's engine, and each one changes the rules of weight loss completely. Here's what I want you to stay with me for, because most people know one of these 3 things. Almost nobody knows all 3 or understands how they work together. And that combination is exactly why so many people are eating less than they ever have and still not losing weight. The first driver, you're losing the wrong kind of weight and gaining it in the wrong place. Here's the question I want you to think about. When you lose weight, any weight at all, what exactly are you losing? Most people assume fat. That's the goal, right? Lose the fat. But here's what most people don't realize. When you cut calories significantly, especially without specific types of exercise, your body doesn't just burn fat, it burns muscle too. And after 65, the ratio gets worse. Your body becomes more likely to burn muscle for energy and more likely to hold on to fat, particularly around the abdomen. This process has a name, sarcopenia. It's the gradual age-related loss of muscle mass that starts in your 40s and accelerates after 60. After 65, the average person loses roughly 1 to 2% of their total muscle mass every single year without specific intervention. Now here's the oh moment. Muscle is your body's calorie-burning engine, not fat, muscle. Every pound of muscle on your body burns calories just to exist, even when you're sitting still, even while you sleep. Fat tissue burns almost nothing at rest. So when you lose muscle, even while you're dieting and losing weight on the scale, you are shrinking the very engine that burns calories. Your body becomes less efficient at burning energy, your metabolism slows, and the next time you eat the same amount, more of it gets stored because there's less muscle there to burn it. This is why so many people experience this exact pattern. Diet, lose a few pounds, plateau, give up, regain the weight, restart. And every single time they restart, it's harder than the time before. Because every cycle, If muscle isn't being protected, the engine gets a little smaller. And here's the part that surprises most people. What the scale shows you during this process is almost completely misleading. You can lose 5 pounds on the scale and actually be in a worse metabolic position than before you started, if those 5 pounds were mostly muscle. And you can gain 2 pounds and be in a better position if you gained muscle while losing fat. The scale is measuring the wrong thing. And most people have been staring at that number their whole lives, thinking it tells them everything. It doesn't. So what actually protects muscle while losing fat after 65? 2 things, and they work together. First, protein. More than you think. Research consistently shows that adults over 65 need significantly more dietary protein per pound of body weight than younger adults, roughly 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram to maintain muscle during weight loss. That's because after 65, the body becomes less efficient at turning dietary protein into muscle tissue. You need more input to get the same output. Second, resistance-based movement. Not hours on the treadmill, not aggressive cardio that burns muscle for fuel. Resistance, anything that asks your muscles to push or pull against a force. Bands, light weights, body weight movements. Done consistently, resistance training sends a signal to your body. Keep this muscle, use it, don't burn it. Those 2 things together, adequate protein and resistance movement, are the foundation of fat loss that actually works after 65. Without them, calorie restriction alone tends to make the underlying problem worse over time, not better. The second driver, your insulin isn't working the way it used to. Here's a question. Have you ever eaten a completely normal meal, nothing extreme, and felt inexplicably tired afterward, heavy, foggy, like you needed to lie down, and then hungry again an hour or 2 later, even though you just ate? That pattern is not weakness. It's not in your head. It's a sign that something specific is happening with insulin, and it's one of the most underexplained reasons why weight loss stalls after 65. Here's how insulin works when everything is functioning properly. You eat a meal, the food breaks down into glucose sugar, which enters your bloodstream. Your pancreas detects the rise in blood sugar and releases insulin. Insulin acts like a key that unlocks the door to your cells, letting glucose in to be used as fuel. Blood sugar comes back down, you feel satisfied and energized. That's the system working correctly. Clean, efficient, smooth. Now here's what changes with age. After years of processing meals, especially meals with a lot of refined carbohydrates and sugar, the cells gradually become less responsive to insulin's signal. The key still works, but the lock is stiffer. It takes more turns to open. So the pancreas pumps out more insulin to compensate. This is called insulin resistance. And here's why it matters so much for weight loss. When insulin levels in your blood are chronically elevated, which is what happens with insulin resistance, your body gets stuck in storage mode. High insulin is essentially a signal to your body, store fat, don't burn it. The body cannot efficiently access its own fat stores for energy when insulin is high. So here's the picture. You wake up in the morning, you've been fasting all night. Theoretically, your body should be turning to fat for fuel. But if insulin resistance is present, your blood sugar drops, your body can't access fat efficiently, and instead sends a hunger signal. You eat, blood sugar spikes, insulin spikes higher than it should, fat storage mode kicks in, blood sugar crashes a couple of hours later, hunger comes back, cycle repeats. You're not overeating because you're undisciplined. You're overeating because your blood sugar is swinging in ways that make hunger signals almost impossible to ignore. Now, what makes insulin resistance worse after 65? Muscle loss, which we just covered, is actually one of the biggest contributors. Muscle tissue is the primary site where glucose gets cleared from your blood after a meal. Less muscle means less capacity to clear glucose, which means blood sugar stays elevated longer, which means insulin has to work harder, which accelerates resistance over time. There's also the cortisol piece, which leads us directly into the third driver. But first, here's the dietary pattern that research shows helps reverse insulin resistance, specifically in older adults. Not zero carbohydrates, not an extreme elimination diet. The pattern that consistently shows the strongest results is this: eat protein first at every meal before the carbohydrates. Even just starting a meal with eggs, fish, chicken, or legumes before eating the starchy components, bread, rice, potato, significantly blunts the blood sugar spike from that meal. Research out of Weill Cornell Medical College showed that eating protein and vegetables before carbohydrates reduced post-meal glucose spikes by up to 37% in people with insulin resistance. 37%. From changing the order of the food on the plate. Not the food itself, the order. That is the kind of practical detail that never makes it into a 12-minute appointment, but it can change how your body processes every single meal from today forward. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Carol, 68 years old, retired teacher. She came to me genuinely defeated. She'd been watching her calories for 3 years, carefully, consistently. She kept a food journal. She walked every morning, and she had lost exactly 4 pounds in 3 years. 4 pounds in 3 years of real effort. When we ran her blood work, her fasting insulin was elevated, a clear sign of insulin resistance that had never been flagged before because her blood sugar was still technically within a normal range. Her muscle mass, measured by a body composition scan, was significantly lower than expected for her age and weight. She had been losing muscle silently for years while the scale barely moved. We didn't put Carol on a diet. We changed what she did first. At every meal, protein before carbohydrates. We added 2 short resistance sessions per week, 20 minutes each, using nothing but a resistance band at home, and we increased her protein intake to match what her muscle tissue actually needed. 8 months later, Carol had lost 14 pounds, but more importantly, her body composition scan showed she had gained muscle while losing fat. The scale number understated how much had actually changed. She told me something in that follow-up appointment that I think about often. She said, "For 3 years, I thought I was the problem. Nobody ever told me the rules had changed." That is exactly why I made this video. The third driver. Cortisol is working against you in ways it never did before. Here's a question most people never think to ask. Why does stress make you gain weight? Not just the eating more when stressed piece, the actual biological mechanism. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. When you face a stressful situation, any stressful situation, whether it's a threat, a deadline, a difficult conversation, or even the physical stress of not sleeping enough, your body releases cortisol. Cortisol's job is to prepare you for action. It raises blood sugar quickly so your muscles have fuel. It shifts blood flow to your limbs. It puts digestion and recovery on hold because right now, those things are not the priority. That is a brilliant survival system for short bursts of real threat. Here's what happens when cortisol stays elevated over long periods of time, which is increasingly common after 65 for reasons I'm about to explain. Chronically elevated cortisol does 4 things that directly sabotage weight loss. First, it raises blood sugar continuously, which keeps insulin elevated, which keeps your body in fat storage mode. You already understand why that's a problem. Second, cortisol actively breaks down muscle tissue for energy. This is the same muscle we've been talking about protecting. Chronic cortisol accelerates the very muscle loss that slows your metabolism. Third, cortisol specifically drives fat storage in the abdominal area. This is not random. The fat cells around the abdomen have more cortisol receptors than fat cells elsewhere in the body. So chronically elevated cortisol preferentially fills those cells. This is why chronic stress produces a very specific pattern of weight gain around the middle, even in people who aren't overeating significantly. Fourth, cortisol disrupts sleep. And here's the part most people don't connect. Poor sleep raises cortisol further. Elevated cortisol disrupts sleep further. It becomes a cycle that feeds itself, and both poor sleep and high cortisol independently slow metabolism, increase hunger hormones, and make fat storage more likely. Now, why does this hit harder after 65 than it did before? 2 reasons. First, the body's ability to regulate and bring cortisol back down after a stressful event becomes less efficient with age. In a younger adult, cortisol spikes after a stressor, and comes back down relatively quickly. After 65, that recovery is slower. Cortisol lingers longer after each trigger. Second, and this is the one that surprises people, dieting itself is a cortisol trigger. Calorie restriction is a physical stressor. Your body registers a significant calorie deficit as a threat signal and responds by raising cortisol, which breaks down muscle, which slows metabolism, which makes the diet less effective over time. This is one of the key reasons aggressive calorie restriction tends to work less and less well the longer it goes on, especially after 65. The harder you restrict, the more cortisol rises, and the more the body fights back. So what actually brings cortisol down? 3 things with the strongest research backing for older adults. First, sleep. Not just more sleep, but consistent sleep. Same bedtime, same wake time, cool bedroom. Every hour of improved sleep quality meaningfully reduces the cortisol baseline your body operates from. Second, a specific type of movement called Zone 2 cardio. This is low-intensity, steady-state movement, a pace where you can hold a conversation but are definitely working. Walking at a brisk pace, gentle cycling, easy swimming. Research consistently shows Zone 2 cardio lowers cortisol over time. Hard, intense exercise actually spikes cortisol temporarily, which is why aggressive exercise programs can backfire for people already dealing with chronic stress and poor sleep. Third, meal timing. Eating within a consistent window, not extreme fasting, just consistent, helps regulate cortisol's natural daily rhythm. Cortisol is naturally highest in the morning, which is partly why eating a protein-rich breakfast earlier rather than skipping it tends to produce better results for weight management after 65 than skipping breakfast does. Here is exactly what to do after this video. 1. Stop measuring success with a scale alone. Get a body composition measurement. Many pharmacies, gyms, and doctors' offices offer this. What you want to know is not just your weight, but your muscle to fat ratio. That number tells you what's actually changing inside your body. 2. Add protein first at every meal starting today. Before the carbohydrates, before the starchy side, eat the protein first. Eggs, fish, chicken, legumes, Greek yogurt, whatever fits your meal. The order matters and the research is clear. Aim for 25 to 35 grams of protein per meal spread across 3 meals. 3. Add 2 short resistance sessions per week, 20 minutes each. A resistance band costs less than $10 and can be used sitting down or standing up. Focus on the large muscle groups, legs, back, arms. You do not need a gym, you need consistency. 4. Do not go aggressive with calorie restriction. A moderate deficit works. A large deficit raises cortisol, burns muscle, and slows metabolism in ways that make long-term progress harder. Eat less than before, but not dramatically less. The protein and resistance work will do more for your body composition than extreme calorie cutting ever will. 5. Fix your sleep before you fix your diet. This sounds backwards. It isn't. Chronic poor sleep elevates cortisol, drives hunger hormones, and blocks fat burning at the hormonal level. No diet overcomes the metabolic damage of consistent poor sleep. If sleep is broken, same bedtime every night, same wake time, no screens for 45 minutes before bed, cool, dark bedroom. Fix that first. 6. Move gently and consistently rather than intensely and occasionally. A 30-minute brisk walk 5 days a week does more for cortisol regulation, insulin sensitivity, and long-term fat loss than one brutal workout session on the weekend ever will. Consistency beats intensity every time, especially after 65. You are not doing it wrong all those years. The rules genuinely changed. Muscle loss changed your metabolism. Insulin resistance changed how your body stores and burns fuel. And cortisol changed how your body responds to stress and dieting in ways that make the old approach work against you. Now you understand what actually changed, and you know what works with the body you have today, not the body you had 20 years ago. That is the conversation your 12-minute appointment never had time for, And that is exactly why this channel exists. If this gave you that, oh, that's what's been happening moment, subscribe to Dr. Peter Vale's Senior Signals and hit like on this video. Share it with someone you know who has been doing everything right and still can't understand why the scale won't move. You might be giving them the answer they've been looking for years. I'll see you in the next one.